down the street here as we get ready to welcome. She had 145 Little Miss candidates.
145, yes.
All second graders from the area schools. So we'll see who become the new Little Miss Pumpkin Show. And we've got the color guard here today is from the Ohio Sons of the American Revolution, historical and patriotic organization dedicated to preserving American history and fostering patriotism through education, community service, and recognizing public service and veterans. And we want to thank Ink My Logo sponsoring today's parade.
Our first band is the Circleville 8th grade band under the direction of Mark Schellenbeck, assisted by Brennan Colvard.
And making their final ride through the parade as the official attendants, we have Little Miss Kinsley Stewart from Westfall, First Lieutenant Ellie Goebel from Logan Elm, and Amara Thompson from Logan Elm. And their next to last parade ride is our Miss Pumpkin Show. That's Zoe Hall from Taze Valley. Her first attendant is Emma Strickler, second lieutenant Madison Blakeman, and as always, the Savings Bank, your sponsor of the royalty float. And then we got our judges from the Wild Turkey Festival. We have Stephanie Williams. Roxy Scarberry is one of our judges. She's done this for a long time. And we have Cameron Mitchell. He's a singer-songwriter down from our way at Chillicothe. We welcome them to the parade today.
We also have the Pumpkin Man that just went by and our mayor. And along with our mayor, Michelle Blanton, is Jordan Hurston. And our first Little Miss is Amelia Bartholow. She is sponsored by Elizabeth Art Color Bar, and she goes to Zane Trace. Followed by Piper Rudder. Piper is sponsored by Simple CRM, and she's a student at Logan Elm. Here we have McKenna Ward, sponsored by Wadlick AG LLC, a student at Logan Elm. Raina Foster, she is sponsored by the Dairy Queen and goes to Amanda. Riley Arnold, sponsored by Queen of Waverly. She attends Circleville. Noella Farrell. She is sponsored by Haynes Total Healthcare Center and attends Circleville. Aaliyah Sisley. She is a student at Taze Valley and sponsored by Sweet Lavender Salon. And here we have Allie Radcliffe. She's sponsored by the Kingston National Bank Kingston branch, and she attends Logan Elm.
Our next marching band today coming down from Grove City is Grove City Christian. They are under the direction of Karina Collier, and they are the Marching Eagles, have 37 musicians in color guard, along with 4 staff members. They compete in MSBA and OMEA contests every year, and it looks like they usually do pretty well. So we welcome the Grove City Christian Marching Eagles. And the folks from Three Pits and a Lady, their mission is to assist with animal care when the funds may not otherwise be available. Their goal is to make sure every dog receives the care and love that it deserves. That's the folks from Three Pits and a Lady.
Sponsored by Jonesy Treasure Box, we have Araya Ezel. She attends Circleville. She is followed by Olivia Lewis. Her sponsor is JV Photography, and she is a student at Logan Elm. Amelia Klein goes to Tays Valley Elementary and sponsored by Sam's Excavating. Peyton Robson, sponsored by First Class Automotive and a student at Westfall. Aspen Kordak, sponsored by Harper Operating Company and a student at Circleville. Here we have Peyton Ebert. She is sponsored by Biley Corp and a student at Logan Elm. $145 of these little girls, John. Here we have Everly Helms. She is sponsored by 104.9 The River and goes to Logan Elm. Vivian Enlow, sponsored by Raise the Bar Fitness and a student at Logan Elm. Next, we have Jade Enlow. She's a student at Logan Elm and sponsored by Pine Valley Construction.
And Jade is followed by the Logan Elm Middle School marching band from just outside of town here under the direction of Becky and Casey Wagner with their assistant Josh Hayes. The staple of the Circleville Pumpkin Show, they perform in 2 parades each year. They want to thank their parents, teachers, administrators, and boosters for giving them the support and the opportunity to perform. This is the Logan Elm Middle School Parade. And here we've got a rare 1942 Chevrolet pickup, limited production because it was during the war years, owned by Marvin and Laney Stully.
Eva Roberts is sponsored by Coughlin and goes to Tays Valley. And she is followed by Katie Heidel. Katie is sponsored by Town and Country Auto Parts and goes to Amanda Clear Creek. Bailey Isaac goes to Circleville Elementary, sponsored by Cool Wine and Company. Brielle Radcliffe is sponsored by Carroll Home Improvements and goes to Logan Elm. McKenna Ward, she goes to Circleville Elementary and is sponsored by Gantz Pizza and Pub. Amalia Ogle is sponsored by Vinton County Bank Pickaway Banking Center and goes to Logan Elm. And she is followed by Ryan Benson Haver. She is sponsored by Be Uniquely Yours and goes to Amanda. Piper Cheyenne is sponsored by Archie's Inflatables and a student at Logan Elm. Blair Hill is our next Little Miss, sponsored by Jen's Tea, and she attends Circleville.
And now we've got the Bell Fountain High School marching band under the direction of Ken Hoffman. When the Bell Fountain, they like to travel a little bit. Not only they play locally in the Dayton Dragons baseball and pumpkin show, they're doing multiple performances in Nashville recently. So welcome the folks from Bell Fountain.
Here we have Parker Boakes. She is sponsored by the Westfall Local School District, where she is a second grade student. She is followed by Cora Harrington, sponsored by Oasis Retreat Body and Skin Therapy, and a student at Logan Elm. Sponsored by Jerry Davis Massage, we have Ella Davis, and she is a second grader at Circleville. She is followed by Adley Palmer. Adley is sponsored by Classic Cutters Hair Salon and a student at Circleville. Lindsay Manson goes to Logan Elm, and she is sponsored by Tasha Holbert, ERA Real Estate. Lennon Giffen, Sophia Breener. She is sponsored by the Beauty Bar and goes to Circleville. Layla Benjamin, sponsored by Bennett Home Services and a student at Amanda. Adeline Killen. Adeline goes to Circleville Elementary and is sponsored by Beefy Finger Gaming.
I'm not sure what Beefy Finger Gaming. I gotta check that out.
I'm not either. We need to find that one out. Yes, it is.
The Pumpkin Girl's back. She's following in Pumpkin Man's skate tracks. Proud to carry on a beloved tradition and wish everyone a safe and happy pumpkin show.
And our next band is Amanda Clear Creek Middle School Marching Aces. They are under the direction of Harrison Poor. And I know that they entertain at all their area football games. So we welcome them to the pumpkin show.
And here's the folks from Guello Rheumatology LLC, the office of Dr. Stephanie Ott, James Wright. Ott is a Circleville gal, daughter of Carl and Nancy Ott, when accepting new patients for those suffering arthritis, gout, osteoporosis, autoimmune diseases.
Here we have Wyatt Congrove. She is sponsored by Kearns Gutters Plus and goes to Circleville. And sponsored by Turtles Mulching Service, we have Savannah Swalball, and she goes to Taze Valley. Here we have Madden McCarley. She is sponsored by Willis and Clark Insurance, and she goes to Taze Valley. She is followed by Madison Stidham. Madison is a second grader at Logan Elm and is sponsored by the Circleville branch of Kingston National Bank. Next, we have Holland Wright. Holland is sponsored by National Disposal Services and goes to Logan Elm. She is followed by Allie Miller. Allie is sponsored by West Banco and goes to Circleville. Tiaja Coles. She is a second grader at Circleville and is sponsored by Advanced Roof Consultant. And our last little miss in this group is Briley Kokenor, and she is sponsored by Kokenor Construction and goes to Circleville.
And following Briley is the Millersport Marching Lakers, coming under the direction of Tassus Savage. They are 17 strong, combining students from 7th through 12th grade. That's the Millersport Marching Lakers.
And here we have Aubriana O'Day. Aubriana is sponsored by Derma Shane and goes to Circleville. Next we have Leela Kidd. She is sponsored by Buckeye Roots Realty and goes to Logan Elm. Next on a classic yellow car is number 41, Lauren Hardman. Lauren is sponsored by Leah's Touch and goes to Westfall. Bailey Mathis. Bailey is sponsored by Buckeye Honda and goes to Amanda. Callie Brown is sponsored by Marcia Grain and attends Amanda. Hallie Hobson goes to New Hope Christian and is sponsored by Circleville Post Acute and Care. And sponsored by Scioto Valley Towing, we have Alana Mazzario, and she is a second grader at Circleville. We have another little miss in the back of the truck. She is number 35.
And here's the Alexander High School Marching Spartans under the direction of Morgan Hafner and Kevin Deal. They come from Athens County, bringing energetic marching style. 37 members strong. Among their other performances this year, the Parade of Hills and OU Band Day. And we welcome the folks from the Salt Creek Livestock. They've been selling 85 years of driving the youth of Pickaway County to make the best better. They encourage you to find a 4-H club near you and join today. It's the folks from Salt Creek Livestock.
Sponsored by Goods Installation Services, we welcome Cruz Good. She is a second grader at Tays Valley. She is followed by Alawan Sites. She is sponsored by Forjac Industrial and goes to Circleville. Hattie Mae Steffens, sponsored by Patrick Enterprises, and a student at Zane Trace. Bristol Allenball, she is sponsored by Style and Thrive Hair Studio, student at Westfall. And she is followed by Sadie Sabine. She's sponsored by Circleville Vision Care, Dr. Liggett, and goes to Circleville. Finley Reichelderfer is next, sponsored by Steppy Transportation and a student at Logan Elm. Isla Carr, sponsored by Heather Delisandre Merge Real Estate, and a student at Amanda. Clara Great is sponsored by Great Customs LLC and a student at Circleville. Bailey Scholl is sponsored by Hair by Miranda and a student at Tays Valley. And last, we have Lennon Giffen finishing up this next group, sponsored by Little Bear Market and a student at Circleville.
And from Beaver, Ohio, we welcome the Eastern Marching Eagles, made up of students from 8th through 12th grade. They perform at the football games and various community parades, much like today's pumpkin show. Welcome the Eastern Marching Eagles.
Off our next group of Little Miss is Maddie Alphen. Maddie is a second grader at Logan Elm and sponsored by Just in Time Lawn Care. Our Little Miss get gift bags at the end, the Queen and her court, and there's only over 74 individual businesses who contributed to their gift boxes. And here we have Matilda Schlichter. She is a second grader at Logan Elm and sponsored by Mid-Ohio Rentals. Paisley 30 Care. She is a second grader at Tays Valley, and Smith sponsored her. Smith's Sausage House is her sponsor. Janalyn Davis, sponsored by Elsie Inc., student at Zane Trace. Berkeley May is sponsored by Sites Farm LLC and a student at Tays Valley. Nora Kersey is sponsored by Dee's Dues and goes to Circleville. Charlotte Christie, sponsored by Pizza Cottage and a student at Zane Trace. Avery Kennedy, she is sponsored by Anna Marie LMT and Aesthetics and goes to Amanda. Here we have Cora Jo Pennington, sponsored by Rose Brothers Paving and a student at Tays Valley. And she is followed by Jocelyn Sparks. Jocelyn is sponsored by the Army Aviation Support Facility number 2 and goes to Circleville.
And coming to us from Marengo, it's the Highland Marching Scots under the direction of Amy Arnett Tomasek. One of their highlights this year, they are going to Disney World in January. It's the Marching Scots from Highland High School.
Harlan Wallace is sponsored by Chillicothe Family Dental and goes to Westfall. And Aaliyah Rice is sponsored by Vernon Farms in Westfall. Layla Richmond goes to Circleville and is sponsored by Kingston Village Express. Brayla Buckner, sponsored by Vollmer Land Title Agency and goes to Circleville. She is followed by Paisley Bennett. Paisley is sponsored by Whittix and goes to Circleville. Jorney McDowell, sponsored by Pumpkin Town Bakery and a student at Tays Valley. Here we have Marin Linthicum, and she is sponsored by Healthcare Logistics and attends Circleville. Emma Skurlock. Emma is sponsored by McKinsey Disposal, and she goes to Logan Elm. Alana Blackburn is sponsored by Circleville Hearing Center and a student at Zane Trace. Quinn Stemfel is sponsored by Asheville Nutrition and goes to Tays Valley. Kinsley Bowers is sponsored by Steppin' Up Event DJ and goes to Logan Elm. There's a lot of little girls that hope to be on that float tonight on our Big Miss Parade. The judges have their work cut out for them.
Oh, definitely. I'd say about half of them hope. The other half, they're trying to figure out why their mom put them on that top of that car.
That could be. That could be.
Here's the folks from Pickaway County Community Action celebrating 60 years of service. They empower individuals and families, offering a variety of service to help support a stronger, more self-sufficient community.
And here, each year, they rise out of the pumpkin patch to strut their stuff down the streets of Circleville. No one really knows who they are or where they come from. All we really know is it's a mess. The It Band from Logan Elm under the direction of Casey Wagner and Josh Hayes. Genesis Wilson leads off our next group of little ones. She's sponsored by Movements Art Studio of Dance, and she goes to Amanda. Joyous Binkley is sponsored by the American Legion and goes to Circleville. A student at Logan Elm, we have Alayla Dahl. Alayla is sponsored by Julie Dickey and Sherry Fox, CB Realty. And here we have Addison Starr. Addison is sponsored by Flow Acre Farms and goes to Logan Elm. Addison Green is our next little miss, sponsored by Green's Sunrise Auto Detailing and a student at Amanda. Serenity Asbell. Serenity is sponsored by Sutherland's and a second grader in Circleville. Josie Houston, sponsored by Remax Impact KR Group, attends Logan Elm. Noella Farrell. Noella is sponsored by, nope, sorry, wrong one. It's an 81. Opal Mosley. Opal is sponsored by Royal Car Wash, and she attends Logan Elm. Gwendolyn Reeves is our next Little Miss, sponsored by Surge Staffing, and she goes to Circleville.
And here we have from Greenfield, the McLean Marching Tigers, they have a history of dazzling the crowd, and they love to travel throughout the state, hitting various band festivals, including OU Band Day. And in addition, there's another band that's going to Disney this year. So featuring their Tigerettes and Majorettes, the Marching Tigers, known for their energetic dancing.
And here, sponsored by Bex Rex, we have Quinley Adams. She goes to Logan Elm. She's followed by Lily Shaw. Lily is sponsored by Roundtown Rentals and goes to Circleville. Rory Foster is our next Little Miss, sponsored by Heart and Homework LLC, and goes to Amanda. And a student at Logan Elm, we have Rowan Lewis. Rowan is sponsored by Sweet Lavender Salon. We have Anna Lynn Mahoney. Anna Lynn is sponsored by Sharon Sprinkles with Sharon Kokenar, and she goes to Westfall. Peyton Granzo, she is sponsored by Bloom and Borough Company, goes to Logan Elm. Isabella Banks, sponsored by Scioto Valley Coffee Shop, goes to Circleville. Hadley Rhodes. Hadley is sponsored by Parrott's Pumpkin Patch and goes to Westfall. She is followed by Liera Beavers. Liera is sponsored by Doc's Tile LLC, goes to Westfall. Huntley McAndrew is sponsored by Wild Pistols Boutique, and she is a student at Circleville. Audrey Wood is a student at Taze Valley and sponsored by Fire and Ice.
Oh, that's Zara Good. Little Miss Zara Good there coming through number 150. So apparently we have more than 145 today.
I just saw that.
We've only got 145 on our list. Here we have some folks from the Charmian Performing Arts Center, a family-owned studio in Circleville, offering dance education, tumbling, and performing arts for all ages. And Circleville Post-Acute coming through is a skilled nursing facility located not too far from here on Atwater Avenue. They want to congratulate their king and queen, Judy and Harold, riding in the back of the truck there. And Judy and Harold get to enjoy the Pride of Newark as they go through the parade. The Pride of Newark is the only marching band in OMA Class AA that's qualified for state marching band finals every year that's existed. That is 45 seasons. No wonder they're the Pride of Newark.
And folks, we have another group of 8 or 10 Little Miss, and this one's led off by Mila Redmond. Mila is sponsored by Pickaway Manor Optalis and goes to Tays Valley. She's followed by Tennyson Boyer, sponsored by Edward Jones. Jonathan Menick goes to Logan Elm. Next, we have Adeline Pasula. Adeline is sponsored by Bubba's Ice, goes to Amanda. And here we have Avery Branham. Avery is sponsored by Andrew C. Palmer Dentistry and Associates and goes to Amanda. Isabella Alava, and she's sponsored by Mum Hibachi and goes to Tays Valley. Kinsley Waller. Kinsley is sponsored by Newman's Insurance Place and a student at Zane Trace. And now you see Aubrey Agan. Aubrey is sponsored by the Circleville First Baptist Church and goes to Circleville. She is followed by Amelia Graham. She is sponsored by Logan Elm Elementary PTO and goes to Logan Elm. And here we have Bella Chestnut. Bella is sponsored by Bella Freight LLC and a student at New Hope Christian.
And making their way up 23 to come join us today, it's the Northwest Marching Mohawks out of McDermott down there in Scioto County. They enjoy traveling around the tri-state area, performing at festivals and parades. They're performing the hit song Hand Clap today, and they want to thank the Pumpkin Show for allowing them to perform at the greatest free show on earth. It is the Northwest Marching Mohawks. And we want to welcome Tays Valley's Future Farmers of America, the Tays Valley FFA, over 160 state and American degrees earned by 250 active members. They've been building leaders since 1962.
Serena Jeffries, sponsored by Shifties and a student at Circleville, is our next Little Miss contestant. And she is followed by Evangeline LeConte, who is sponsored by Central Ohio Music Therapy, LLC, and a student at Circleville. Liliana Gilmore, sponsored by North Court Family Dentistry, and a student at Logan Elm. And then we have Kalia Burris. She is sponsored by Taylor Wheeler Photography and goes to Circleville. Now we have Rosalie Whitridge. She is sponsored by Tom Whiteside, Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, and a student at Tays Valley. Followed by Charlie Poorman, who is a student at Logan Elm and sponsored by the Zwicker House. Here we have Loretta Valentine, sponsored by Linda McLaughlin Howard Hanna Realtor, goes to Circleville. And Nora Conley, she is sponsored by Circleville Elementary School and goes to Circleville.
And we welcome the folks from the Greater Ohio Showmen Association, celebrating 75 years of representing Ohio's concessionaires and ride companies. They have 450 members providing amusement equipment to fairs and festivals across the state. That is the Ohio Showmen's Association.
We have Reagan Hemming, who is sponsored by Old Glory Groundskeeping, student at Circleville. Followed by Reagan Adams. Sponsor is Carrie at the Color Bar, and she is a student at Logan Elm. Carson Elkins is our next little miss, sponsored by Hannah Hemming Photography, attending Amanda. And she is followed by Addison Lovett, who is sponsored by New Hope Christian Academy, where she attends school. Reese Pinstock is sponsored by Pinstock Homes and a student at Amanda. Ivy Brill is our next little miss. She is sponsored by Dynaho Ag Services and a student at Westfall. Hallie Baldwin, sponsored by American Force Field Service LLC and a second grader at Tays Valley.
Got a little bit of a delay here while they make their way around the parade route. Do want to give a shout out to Mike and Dusty Helberg for winning the pumpkin weigh-in this morning with 1,972 pounds. Not too bad.
Here we have Addison Sherritt. Addison is a student at Westfall and is sponsored by PSPS Surveying. Naya Hamill is sponsored by Earth Workin' and goes to Logan Elm. Bentley Waltz is sponsored by Lions Den Services LLC, and she goes to Tays Valley Elementary. And Lindley Moore is sponsored by Clear Creek Cakes and Bakes and a student at Amanda.
And now we've got coming up to us from just nearby at Ross County, they have the Southeastern Marching Panthers. They proudly represent their school and community at events like the Londonderry and Richmonddale Memorial Day parades, the Ross County Fair, the Salt Creek Valley Festival, of course, the Pumpkin Show. And you catch them every Friday night at the Southeastern varsity football games. It is the Southeastern Marching Panthers.
Elizabeth Hammond is our next little miss. She is sponsored by Kinnaman Anesthesia Services LLC and a student at Circleville. And she is followed by Riley Fox. Riley Fox is sponsored by RMW Excavating and Direction Drilling and a student at Amanda. Amelia Witherup, she is sponsored by Charmian Performing Arts Center and a student at Logan Elm. Marley Asbell is sponsored by Chieftain Feed and Supply LLC, and she also goes to Logan Elm. Kyla Begley is sponsored by TL Wilson Trucking and goes to Westfall. Lena Mahoney is sponsored by R&M Tires, and she goes to Circleville. Harper Milbrandt is sponsored by Sun Valley Campground and a student at Circleville. Raylyn Whiteside is next. She is sponsored by WW Diesel and goes to Circleville. Adeline Dean is our next little miss. She's sponsored by Shepherd's Reliable Roofing and goes to Circleville.
And here we have the folks from the Wingate Circleville Senior Living Community. They got a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving theme going to this today. They say, just like Charlie Brown reminds us to be grateful for life's simple blessings, the residents of the Wingate celebrate friendship, joy, and community. That's kind of cool. Yesterday when they were doing the Dr. Liggett always has some people out when he loads his pumpkin, and some of the folks they brought the bus out from some of the folks from Wingate to watch the pumpkin being cut and loaded. That was kind of cool. And it looks like our parade is just about over, because right after the Wingate folks, we have the bookmobile from the Pickaway County Library. It's a library on wheels with county-wide stops year-round. They thank everybody for their opportunity to educate, enrich, and engage with the community. So we had 145 on the list. We saw a 150, but
Yes.
we never saw a 46, 47, 40. So we're not quite sure exactly how many little girls are in there, but there's a lot.
There's a lot, that's for sure. And if you have friends and family that you think would like to watch our parades, they can see us on our YouTube channel, which is circlevilletv.com. We will be covering all the parades this week and the Big Miss and the Little Miss judging as well. So,
yes, and if we hope to be able to bring you the judging live from Pumpkin Show Park. If something does go wrong, because it is just, it is what it is, don't forget to check us out on YouTube yet, circlevilletv.com, or just go to YouTube, look up CGTV. Either one will get you there. You can watch this year's Pumpkin Show, last year's Pumpkin Show, football games, government meetings, everything that goes on in the community, you can find there on our YouTube channel.
That's right. So without further ado, we're going to say goodbye for now and hope that you'll tune us back in tonight at 8 p.m. where we'll be seeing 13 juniors from our various high schools compete for the title of Miss Pumpkin Show.
So we will see you all later today.
See